I'm 28 and still live at home with that. Why would I ever move out? Why would I do that? You kidding me? Do you like me at home?
I love you at home. When you're ready to go, you go. You do whatever you have to do.
I'm never going.
The fear in her eyes. She was like, hey besties, today I want to sit down and talk about the pressures of moving out of your parents' place and living with your parents as an adult. I feel like I could rant about this for quite some time. I guess I can only speak for myself, but I personally have felt the pressures to move out, and not from my parents, just from society. I felt like I was a failure for not moving out at 18 or 19 years old, and I did end up moving out on my own. I have a vlog of doing so.
But I wanted to take you along this journey with me because this is my first time being on my own. So I basically wanted to just document the experience and share it with you guys. I'm just trying to get my life together because I can't live like this no more.
I had moved in with my little sister and one of our mutual friends. And me and my sister are complete opposites. I love her very much, but we're just very different. So there was a lot of clashing. We did speak about boundaries before moving in, and those boundaries were not respected. So it didn't work out and I had to move back in with my parents. I'm the type of person that likes to be alone. So living with someone other than my sister was just not something that I was down for. I much rather come home to my parents, plus I was absolutely missing them. I'm very fortunate. They are literally my best friends. I love them so much. And living back here with my parents, it doesn't even feel like I'm living with my parents. It feels like I just have roommates. They treat me as an adult. I contribute to the household. I pay rent. I pay for my groceries. So it's like living with roommates. They're my best friends. And I know that's not the case for everybody, so I feel very grateful for that. And they're more than happy to have me here, which is also great. Because I know some people have parents that do push them out or kick them out even at 18 or younger. So I just want to state that I feel very blessed for the situation that I'm in. I know it's not the same for everybody, so this is just my personal opinion. So, okay, let's get into it.
Should you live with your parents past 22?
I'm 20 right now. I'm still living with my parents.
Yeah, see, here's the thing, right? Come here. At this point, there is no longer an age limit to staying with parents. Does that make sense? Right? I know before it was like, oh, once we turn like 20 or so, try to move out of your parents' house. The way that life is going, that is quite literally almost impossible at this point. People who claim they don't live with their parents anymore, come here. They probably have roommates somewhere else, right? And living with your parents or living with roommates, both are pretty uncomfortable. The only difference is, at least if you live with your parents, somebody's going to say that they love you at the end of the night. Well, for most of us. But you know what I'm saying, right? At this point, living by yourself is almost impossible. Anybody who does live by themselves, they either are working so much that they can't even enjoy living by themselves, or somebody is helping them pay those bills, because at this point, it's impossible.
See, that's the thing. Like, there definitely are people out there that live by themselves, but they are hustling. Like, they basically live at work, not at their house. You have to weigh out the pros and cons. We're gonna get into it later on in this video, but I know there's some situations where living with their parents is not good for their mental being. In that case, maybe it is better for you to go out and be hustling and being physically exhausted rather than mentally exhausted and mentally not doing so well, you know what I mean? So you just have to weigh out the pros and cons. In my position, like, it would be stupid of me to be moved out when I absolutely love it here. I'm welcome here. It is not bad for my mental being. If anything, it's better. And really the only reason that I would leave at this point is pressures from society. That's absolutely silly. Why would I waste the money? And I can save money here for my future. I pay for everything on my own, but I'm saving a significant more amount than if I was living out in the big expensive world.
Let's get ready for the day and talk about why I still live at home at 29 years old. I get a ton of questions about this topic because I know it's not super common to still be living at home with your family when you're about to turn 30. I feel like a lot of people who live with their parents still in their late 20s or early 30s are very insecure about it and feel like they need to have like a good reason for why they're still living at home. And I simply just do not think that's the case. You don't have to explain to anybody what you decide to do with your life and your living situation. That's nobody's business but your own. But I personally have no issue talking about it, so I will definitely share with you guys why I chose to live at home. So financially speaking, no, I don't need to be living at home. But I have a really close relationship with my family, so why would I leave if I don't want to? In my mind, I would kind of rather be living at home right now, saving to buy something, than renting if I don't have to. But let me just say, I think some people are living with their parents still because of financial reasons, which is totally valid, and for other reasons too, like mental health. There's lots of things going on, and we just shouldn't be judging people's situation.
Yeah, so that's another good point. It can also be for your mental being, like you cannot be by yourself. Like it's not safe for you to be on your own. I remember when I was living with my sister at our apartment, I had nights where I was so depressed and I ended up texting my dad a not so great message, basically saying that I don't want to be here anymore. And I ended up just like crying myself to sleep, and at like some absurd hour, it was very early in the morning, my parents were knocking on my door to make sure that I was okay. In cases like that, it may be better for you to be with your parents. You don't want to be relying on other people for your well-being, of course, but when you're going through dark times, it's essential to be with loved ones, whether it's family or friends.
I definitely have days where I would rather be in my own space, but for the most part, those things don't really outweigh the pros of being at home at this point. Plus, I know it's sad to think about, but you know, your parents are not going to be around forever, and I really do just cherish the time that I have with them.
Your parents are not going to be here forever. So if you have a good relationship with your family, you want to soak up all the time that you can get. And in the future, one day I will be married, and that man will come and sweep me off my feet and take me away, and I may only see my family for holidays and such. I don't know. So I'm just fully taking advantage and just soaking up all the time and all the memories I can create with them while I'm here. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, I don't know why there's this weird judgment for people that live with their parents. My brain automatically goes to like, you're lazy if you live with your parents. Like the stereotypical like son that lives in the basement of his mom's house and plays video games all day. Like that's the type of mindset that I have. That's not necessarily true. Like she said, she can afford to be on her own, but like you don't have to be. Back in the day, it was normal for women to live at home until a man comes and puts a ring on her finger and takes her away. That was just the normal. That's low-key what I'm waiting for. I ain't gonna lie.
If the girl still lives at home, red flag.
Why is that a red flag for you?
Because there's either something financially going on, they're too attached to their mom or their dad, or there's something else that I can't predict that's going on.
What age do you think they should like leave home and look for independence?
In the 30s.
In the 30s?
30-year-old range.
Like sure, 30-year-old range, okay, but there's still certain circumstances that can play a part in that. Calling it a red flag is a little bit extreme. It's hard too because I feel like there's different standards for men and women. Like if a man was living at his mom's place in his 30s, it's the weird double standard. I don't know. In my eyes, the man's just supposed to be the leader. And so I would want my man to, I mean, like I'm catching myself here. That doesn't necessarily mean living with his parents that he's not financially stable. He may just be being smart with his money. He's single, whatever. So he's banking all his money and living at his parents' house. But in your 30s, like in your 20s, okay. But in your 30s, it's getting a little... I don't know, is that bad to say? You can tell I don't have a script for this whatsoever. So like, I could be switching up on myself with the words that I say. This is basically just like I'm talking to a friend, we're ranting together. That's what's happening. Let's talk about this in the comment section down below, how you feel about this. Is it a red flag? Is it a beige flag? Is it whatever? In your case, you don't really care?
If you haven't moved out of your parents' house by 25, you're a failure. And the reason you're a failure isn't because you still live at home, it's because you've never even tried to move out. There's more merit to moving out on your own, messing everything up, and having to move back in with your parents than never having moved out in the first place. If you're still living at your parents' house at 25, you've probably been sitting back hesitating on something for the past 2 or 3 years. Oh, once I get X amount in my savings account, then I'll move out. Oh, once I finally have that dream job, then I'll have enough income to go start my own business. Issue with staying at your parents' house is you have no responsibilities, no monthly bills to pay, no commitments, there's no ticking clock at all.
See, that's not true. You can't make like a blanket statement like this because some people are paying for rent, some parents don't charge their kids for rent. You're not a failure, first of all, for living with your parents at 25. Like I said, I did personally try being out on my own with my sister and it simply did not work. I didn't feel 100% safe in my environment, so I got out of there, and that does not make me a failure. And you too, you're not a failure for living with your parents. I just want to make that very clear. It also depends on how you are handling living with your parents. For example, like if you are playing video games all day, or you just find yourself in this lazy, non-productive rut. You're not really doing anything with your life. You're not taking this opportunity to save, make money for your future. You're not just laying back and doing nothing. And that's a totally different situation.
You're constantly living in a state of limbo because of how comfortable you are. Oh, dude, I can't wait to start my own business. I can't wait to move to Manhattan and get my dream finance job. You're telling your friends about your goals, but you're doing absolutely nothing to go chase them. But then the second you move out on your own, even if you can't afford it, you have bills to pay, you have to make rent every month, your back's against the wall and the pressure's on. The business you thought about starting, you're going to start on day one when you move out. The dream job that you said you're going to apply for the past 6 months, you're going to apply for on the first day you live on your own. And then you're either going to look back in 6 months and say, holy shit, my life has changed forever. I have my dream job. I have my dream business. I'm good. Or you're going to say, well, time to move back in with mom and dad because I tried it and I failed and I learned a lot, but at least I tried it. So if you've been sitting at home waiting to pull the trigger on moving out of your mom and dad's house to get your own place or move to a new city, just do it, because the worst thing that's ever going to happen is you have to move back in at home with your parents, get judgment from some friends, and move on with your life.
So I understand his mindset. Basically, it's gonna put fire under your ass. Just get on your shiz while you're with your parents. That's always the first best option, obviously.
If you live at home with your parents and you feel ashamed, don't. When I graduated college, I'm 24 now. I really wanted to move out. I was like, I want to move to Boston. I want to get my own apartment. The math wasn't mathing on how much I was making on my salary. My first job, it was like $45K after taxes. And I needed to be humbled a little bit. Who's moving out where and when? You're not. So I lived at home with my parents, and most of my friends did too. But then they all started to go back to school or get jobs, and they live in the city now, and either their parents pay their rent or they like just work crazy hours to afford rent. I've learned since posting TikToks stating I'm a 24-year-old living at home with my parents that so many other people also live at home with their parents. Even if you move out of your house and you have to move back in with your parents because it's just a budget thing, it makes sense to you, right? It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. That is okay. You are not taking a step back. My number one thing is it only ever has to make sense to you, so never be ashamed.
It's so true. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm the only 24-year-old that still lives with my parents, but that's so not true. The age actually just keeps getting older and older because the cost of living is absolutely insane. Again, there's two different situations. One, you could be financially able to move out, but it's just smarter for you to stay put. You don't feel the need to leave the nest, like if you're not being pressured to go. The other side of the coin is you just cannot financially afford it because it's absolutely insane. The prices are insane. You would likely have to get a roommate or 2 or 3 to be out on your own.
1 in 10 people aged between 30 and 34 are living with their parents still. This is quite fascinating. If you think back in the day, people were getting married when they were like 20, yeah. And now we've got 30 to 35-year-olds that are still living at home. You know, like that's...
It makes me feel better about my life, I will be honest.
Totally, yes. Yeah. I mean,
it's like everyone's struggling. It's not just me.
Yeah. And this is up 10% from a decade earlier. So it is getting worse and worse and worse. Like, at what point does that figure start going down and people start moving out of home earlier?
When it's less expensive to live out of home.
Yeah, but when does that happen? Like, you know, there's got to be
something.
You
tell me, you're the finance expert.
But that's got to be at some point. We can't be sitting here in 10 years' time and be like, wow,
45-year-olds living at home.
Yeah, like, it's kind of weird.
Maybe it'll become normal. Yeah, because it's how expensive it is.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with adults living with their parents.
I don't think people understand. Right now, the average amount of money you have to make in order to live by yourself is $60,000 a year, meaning you have to get paid $30 an hour. Come here. And that is just to cover rent. That's not including furniture. That's not including other bills. That's not including car issues, right? If you were to put all that together, you'd have to make about $75,000 a year, meaning you have to get paid over $35 or $40 an hour. So if you know somebody that is making you feel bad because you live at home with their parents, unless they are making $40 an hour at their job, they're definitely lying to you about their living situation. They either live in a closet or they have 4 roommates. There's nothing wrong with staying with your parents right now because at this moment in time, the new generation, they can't save any money. The only thing going up is the cost of things, not the actual payment towards their lives.
Preach. Now, you don't necessarily have to be making $60,000 a year, but sometimes You actually do. It depends on where you live. First of all, that's a huge factor. And if you're living beyond your means, obviously.
I'm going to be so honest with you guys. Most of being able to afford to live on your own is not living beyond your means. And I think the average person really doesn't actually understand what that means. Just because you can afford to buy something, like you have the money in your account, doesn't mean that you can actually afford to buy something. Case in point, I drive a 2012 Nissan Sentra. Nothing fancy or glamorous. I bought her used on Facebook Marketplace in 2019 for, I think, like $1,800. It wasn't even $2,000. Maybe with taxes, it was $2,300. But yeah, she gets me from point A to point B. I haven't had any severe mechanical issues. And I love not having a car note. I love not having a car note, and I love having low insurance. I have had the option to buy a new car over the last few years, but I've decided not to because the money that I would spend on a car note, I can easily allocate towards other things like maybe groceries or even recreational things like vacations. Number 2 is be very careful about fast fashion websites. When I first moved out, I was buying so much on like Fashion Nova. I don't think Shein was really a hot thing yet, but I was doing constant Fashion Nova hauls, $200 here, $300 there. It adds up. I've never bought on Shein, and I'm not saying that I never would. I usually prefer to spend a little bit more on higher quality clothing just because I realized that with my Fashion Nova type clothing, they weren't making it past a few wash cycles, but definitely not past multiple seasons. I have gotten really good at shopping clearance. I used to spend $200 a month on my eyelashes. Now I buy the clusters and I do them myself for $10 a month. Learn how to grocery shop. My God, the price of groceries right now is ridiculous, and if you do not know how to spend your money wisely to last you, you can easily go broke trying to feed yourself. If you live in the Southeast, download the Publix app, shop the deals, shop the sales. Make sure that you're buying items that you can use to make multiple meals throughout the month.
It's so easy to fall in the trap of living beyond your means, 100%. Like she said, you can be like, oh, I can't afford Aritzia Anthropology. Like, that is way too expensive. But then you'll go and spend that amount on like numerous things from fast fashion websites when you could just get a few things which will last you many, many years. Anyways, that's a topic for a different video. It's not just rent. It's rent, utilities, groceries, internet, clothing. I guess this is part of groceries, but when you run out of toothpaste and body wash and conditioner, makeup, hair products, if you get your nails done, your eyelashes done, all of these things add up and it's freaking expensive. In Canada, I feel like you do have to be making at least $60,000 a year to live comfortably. Some people in the comments were saying they make 40 grand a year and they can get by, but it totally depends on where you live.
Listen, I'm 24 and I still live at home. Like, what? For sure. Are you kidding me? My man and I, we attempted to move out. Yeah, that'll be $1,600 for a studio apartment, not including groceries, not including partying, not including living. Woo! I don't know where that voice came from, but that was probably the devil himself, because you're out of your mind if you think we're going to pay that to go live in a little box. Get out of here.
Let's talk about living at home in your late 20s. First of all, the economy sucks and we are in a cost of living crisis, so all judgment needs to exit stage left immediately. But I'm 29 and I live at home with my parents. I've had my own place. I live with friends. I've lived with my partner. But I'm at home because it truly is the best decision for me at this stage in my life. And while I would love my own place, and I'm planning on doing that very soon, the reality is that living at home is smart, y'all. Living at home is comforting. Living at home for me right now is a blessing. And I'll continue to do that as long as it serves me. And when you really think about it, we are still toddler adults. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing out here. And times are different. The market is different. Groceries are different. But somehow salaries are still the same they were 20 years ago. Make it make sense. So I'm taking things one day at a time. And when those things change, so will my address.
Preach, queen, preach. Okay, let's talk about the opposite side of things when home is not necessarily comforting.
If you are between the ages of like early 20s to like late mid 20s, please stick around. Let's talk seriously really quickly. You know those people who say, oh yeah, stay at your parents' house for as long as you can. You're going to save so much money. You're going to do this. Don't listen to them, please. Don't let them persuade you, okay? Do not feel bad for leaving your home. And I'm going to tell you why. A lot of parents, we have to recover from their parenting. And I am starting to realize that, but it just goes to show you that 22 years of just trying to just be the best and just, you know, stick it out and just do, no, I would rather work 2 jobs, have eggs in the fridge, and come home to a peaceful household. Not like, people don't understand. Like, if you're staying with your parents to save money and they're, you know, they're not crazy or they're not like in your face, great. But if you're developing mental illness, you need to like reevaluate. Staying at your home, at your parents' house, just to avoid like bills and stacking up your bread is not worth what you guys think it's worth. Like, it's really not. Like, it'll change your whole persona. It will, like, you'll feel stuck. You'll feel like you can't grow. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like, a lot of people thrive more when they leave the nest, like they move states. They have to put themselves in new environments for them to just grow and branch out. If you're staying at home just for the purpose of saving money for an apartment, you don't realize that you might be like really limiting yourself and, you know, stressing yourself out more. It's going to have an aversive effect on you, to be honest. But I think more people need to talk about the real side, like, oh, just suck it up, like, whatever, you're saving money. No. Like, I'm real life, I cannot focus. Like, I'm a person, I have to get things done a particular way. I'm very persistent, you know, I'm an overachiever, and just having them disrupt my brain stimulation, it causes me to have poor sleeping patterns, poor eating habits. I stopped being active. And then all of these things that were great in my routine that kept me just sane and stimulated, having that disruption of them, no.
Okay, so I can somewhat relate to this. Before I moved out with my sister, I was feeling very low and down, and I feel like I needed a new space to really thrive, because your environment plays a huge role in your mental well-being. Huge role, especially for me. And so I just felt like I need to get the frick out of here. I need to branch out. I need to get out into the big world, grow and become an adult and all these things. It was great at the start, and I don't regret doing so. I think it was good for me. I learned a lot of things. So sometimes, yes, for your mental well-being and for your growth as a human, moving out is a great thing.
It just contributes to like so much of like a loss in identity and like a loss in independence.
This video really just like broke my heart, because literally this time last year I was in that exact same position. I had to move from LA into my sister's home in my small southern town in South Carolina. Not only did I lose a majority of what I felt like I worked so hard to get in LA, I was at rock bottom. Like, I legit thought that like my world was over. I was a failure. I was struggling with that same thing of like just feeling like I had no privacy. Like, I was like exposed while I was trying to like heal and figure out my life. So I really gave myself the space to like grieve my independence. At that point, I was like, okay, like, I need to figure out an escape plan. And I know escape plan probably sounds like really drastic, and this is no shade to my family. I love them down. I called it an escape plan because like I had to get clear on how I was going to get the heck out of my situation. Not because I was trying to run away from my family, but because it was literally turning me into a person I did not want to be. This is not the end of the world, and this is a temporary situation that does not define me. I like to call my time back home like my pit stop, because without it, I don't think I would have been able to get the clarity in just that rest period to figure out what my next move was going to be. You feel stuck? Absolutely. Will you feel trapped? Absolutely. Will you feel like you're stuck between your past and where you want to go? Absolutely. But once you've come down from that, it like gives you this clarity that you're able to actually appreciate your time home, appreciate your family, spend time with them, and just really cherish that time, because living on your own is an entirely different chapter that is the goal, but it's still a learning curve that you have to adjust to once you're here. When I tell you, the living with your parents, living with your family when you are grown, will humble you, but for the better.
No, I love that. How she used the term pit stop. I love that. That's exactly what it is. It's just a time period where you can be smart with your money and make your next move rather than like frantically panicking and not making smart moves because you're just in this survival mental state. When you're at home, you can kind of rest and make smart decisions for your future self. And that's about as far as I can get into speaking about this because my parents did do a great job raising me. They are great parents. They never stunted my growth. They were never abusive, whether physically or verbally, none of that. So I can't personally speak from an experience that I've never had, but if you're in that type of situation, I just want to say that you're not alone and I hope you get out of it very soon. And if you are out of it, I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I just wanted to put in that video so that those of you that are in that situation or were feel seen and heard, because I know it's not all sunshine and butterflies and rainbows. I'm very grateful that I live where I live right now because I have the space that I have been desiring for years. I live in a beautiful, beautiful community with amazing people. I feel incredibly grateful for where I live. And I don't feel how I used to a couple years ago before I moved out, which is why I'm staying put.
I'm 28 and still live at home with that. Why would I ever move out? Why would I do that? You kidding me? Do you like me at home?
I love you at home. When you're ready to go, you go. You do whatever you have to do.
I'm never going.
She was like,
why is it like not normalized that we live with our parents in our 20s? I'm pretty sure I'd tell my parents like I'm riding and dying with them. Like they will leave before I will leave the house.
No, for real.
Like, how do you want me to get a house? I'm just a girl.
I'm just a girl. You expect me to live out in the big world? I'm just a girl.
I get the whole wanting to be by yourself kind of thing, but that's expensive. Like, you gotta be rich for that.
They will leave before I leave, straight up. That girl, me and her would be best friends.
If I want to live with my parents, I'm gonna live with my parents. Society's not gonna peer pressure me in moving out because I don't see the point of it. If you have the luxury, the privilege to stay at home and live with your parents, take that.
That's the thing too, like it is definitely a privilege to live at home with your parents. If you have parents that have their arms out and are willing to take you back, or if you haven't left in the first place, they're not pressuring you to leave. It is a luxury. It can be very easy to take that for granted, to have a home to come to rather than being out on the streets.
I'm a 22-year-old college student and currently live at home with my mom. The only problem is she always tries to control me. I've confronted her about it, but she'll say, it's my house and my rules, so if you don't like it, then get out. So how do I maintain my independence while not getting put out?
See, Kyra, you get independence when you become independent. But as long as you are dependent and you live in her house, then see your mama, she making rules.
If you're wanting me to like move toward independence and be an adult, then kind of give me that leeway and treat me like one.
Well, that ain't how it works. How much do you contribute? Do you buy groceries, pay the mortgage? Do you even know what a light bill is? Do you make the car payment? Why is she so quiet? That, folks, is the silence of a dependent. That's the sound of my children when I ask them the same question.
I don't know her situation. I don't know how she lives with her mama. But like he said, if you are not contributing, it's your parents' house, it's your parents' rules. Again, I feel lucky because my parents do not treat me as a child. Again, it's like we're best friends. We just have that type of dynamic. I've shown that I am a grown adult. I help pay the bills. I pay for my own food. I don't drive, but if I was driving their vehicle, I would obviously help chip in for gas. If you're not doing any of these things, he's right. Like, you're being dependent dependent. You're not being independent. You have to show them that you are independent, that you are a grown adult. I don't understand yet because I'm not a mama, but deep down, you're still their little baby. Like, you can't blame them fully. Like, you're still always going to be their little girl no matter how old you are. Let's talk about how expensive it is if you're not financially stable to move out, because it's not just the first month's rent that you need in order to move out.
First of all, whatever your monthly rent is, you should have at least 3 times that in savings. The reason is that when you rent a place, you have to pay your first month's rent, right? But you also have to pay a deposit. And the deposit is usually the same amount as your rent. And it can be anywhere from 1 to 2 times the rent, in addition to the first month's rent that you have to pay. So if you're looking to spend up to $1,100 a month in rent, you should have $3,300 set aside just to give the landlord right when you move in there. Next, when it comes to getting things for your first place, you can do this literally as cheap as possible and spend hardly anything. It's totally up to you, your budget, and your wants. Most of the furniture I have ever had in my life is secondhand and comes from Craigslist. One of the things you can do is get free furniture pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true. You can get free furniture on like Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that. My family has definitely done that in the past.
Some things around your kitchen, for example, you can definitely get for free, like pots and pans and silverware and knives and, you know, even plates and cups. But cleaning supplies you'll probably have to purchase, and the dollar store is a great place to get those. Also, you don't think about this, but like condiments and spices for your kitchen, those aren't everyday purchases, right? But when you move into a place, you're gonna want to do like a big up spending on those things.
Hi, someone recently asked me if they had $5,000 saved, but their monthly rent would be $1,350, should they move out? And my answer is no, and I'm gonna explain to you why. It's financially brutal that first month of moving out. Your rent is just one of the expenses that you're gonna pay that month. Your deposit can be as low as $500, that's the lowest I've seen, to first, last, and a half, which I have personally paid before. Most buildings now require renter's insurance, and you're gonna have to pay to turn on your utilities and your Wi-Fi. The first grocery shop is going to be the most expensive, because if you're starting from scratch, you're going to need things like spices and everything in your cabinets and pantries. And if you haven't bought in your cleaning supplies ahead of time, you're going to have to buy all of those things. Mention your other bills like your car payment and all of those things. You have to plan for things that just happen, like flat tires and medical bills and things that just happen with life. You need to buy furniture and things that are shockingly expensive, like trash cans. You want to be as prepared as possible and save as much money as possible so you have enough cushion to deal with all of the things you have to deal with as an adult.
See, those are the things like you don't necessarily think about all the time. When I moved out with my sister, I was like, we don't have a vacuum. Vacuums are expensive. Like, luckily you can get all of these things on things like Facebook Marketplace for much cheaper, or even free if you're lucky, but they're just things that you don't necessarily think about. And like they both said, first grocery shop is going to be the most expensive because you're missing things like household cleaners, spices, condiments, you know, all the little things. Last thing I want to touch on is when you actually are living on your own. I feel like it can, especially on social media, it's very romanticized or glamorized, I guess you could say. For example,
some people don't understand that sitting in your own house, in peace, eating snacks, and minding your own business is priceless.
Watching that, you're like, yes, that looks amazing. That's exactly the life that I want. But social media, as we all know, is a highlight reel. It could also look a lot like this.
Here is something that nobody really talks about in terms of living on your own. I feel like we all really love the idea that no one's gonna steal your food from the fridge, no one's gonna tell you what to do. If you think in terms of personal convenience, it seems like the world is really in your favor in terms of living on your own. I feel like no one's addressing what happens when everything starts to snowball and you're really just trying to balance everything all at once. Laundry starts to pile up, the bathroom needs to be cleaned, you haven't vacuumed in a really long time. You're exhausted coming home from an 8-hour workday, but you still have to cook dinner, and that's gonna take at least 30 minutes. Grocery trips become a burden and bills pile up. And don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful that I have access to be able to live on my own. But I just want to start the discussion that while we are romanticizing our alone time and how wonderful it can be, it's also extremely challenging both mentally and emotionally.
Plus, not to mention, it can get very lonely and sad for people. It can be tough to be a strong, independent woman. But I think that's all I wanted to touch on in this video. If you're living with your parents, don't feel bad about it. Make the most out of this time. And if you're living on your own and you feel moving back with your parents will really hurt your ego, but you know it would be the best decision for you, don't feel bad about having to move back in with your parents. I was reading so many comments under those videos, people having to move back in with their parents for the third, fourth time. It's okay. Life happens to us all. It's a pit stop. You're not a failure. I love you guys so much. Let's have a discussion about all this. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Let's chat it up. I will see you guys in my next video. Mwah, mwah. Bye.